Andrew, brother of Simon Peter. We know he's a Galilean fisherman. We know he originally came from Bethsaida. Now, at the time of the ministry of Jesus, he lived with his brother in a house near the synagogue in Capernaum. Mark was a follower of John the Baptist. We find that out in John 1:35-40, and that's one that probably is worthy of referencing. Because, as we go through these different apostles, it's interesting to trace where did they come from and how were they linked up with Jesus. And here we're told that Andrew linked up with him because he was originally a follower of John the Baptist, and then there was kind of a moment where John the Baptist said, that's the guy you should be following, not me. The next day, John was there again with two of his disciples. And in this case, it's referring to John the Baptist, not John the evangelist never refers to himself by name in his whole gospel. Never once. The next day, John was there again with two of his disciples. When he saw Jesus passing by, he said, "Look, the Lamb of God." When the two disciples heard him say this, they followed Jesus. Turning around, Jesus saw them following and asked, "What do you want?" They said, "Rabbi," which means teacher. And it's good they make that distinction because it does not mean he was a Jewish rabbi in the sense we think of a rabbi today. "Where are you staying?" "Come," he replied, "and you will see." So they went and saw where he was staying and spent the day with him. It was about the 10th hour. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, so see, we're packing a lot of stuff in that one phrase, was one of the two who heard what John had said and who had followed Jesus. The first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, "We have found the Messiah," that is the Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. And we'll go over the next part a little later. Not really having to do with the course specifically, but that's in the first chapter of John. When Andrew announces to the world, well, first John the Baptist announces to the world, "This is the Lamb of God," that guy walking there. And then Andrew announces to the world, "We found the Messiah." In some of the other Gospels, the earlier Gospels, they don't figure out who he is until like the very end. Because Jesus refers to himself as the Son of Man at the beginning, and then finally later he tells him who he really is. Remember the bit about him? "Peter, who do you say I am?" And then Peter says, "You're the Son of the living God." It's not like that in John. John, it's all up front. They know from the beginning, this is the Messiah, this is the Lamb of God, and that's that. Recruitment. Matthew records that Jesus recruited Andrew and Peter while they were fishing in the Sea of Galilee, so it's a slightly different story. On the account in the Gospel of John, Andrew encounters Jesus first and then rushes to tell his brother, "We have found." Anyway, moving on. Other appearances by Andrew in the New Testament. He's present when Jesus healed the fevered mother-in-law of Peter. Once again, the reference to Peter being married, having a mother-in-law. When Jesus began healing people from the house of Andrew and Peter in Capernaum. And that's kind of interesting too, because Jesus, when he was in Capernaum, his headquarters was the house of Peter and Andrew. So that's probably Andrew was with Peter, James, and John on the Mount of Olives when Jesus gave his sermon on the end times. So this is sometimes referred to as the mini-apocalypse, where essentially the whole book of Revelation is condensed into a chapter and a half. It's in each of the Matthew, Mark, and Luke Gospels. Now, this is the inner circle. Peter, James, son of Zebedee, John, son of Zebedee. But occasionally, Andrew was allowed to tag along. So this was one of those cases. Andrew finds the initial 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish when Jesus feeds the 5,000. Everybody regionally familiar with that. I don't have to go over that incident. Well, it's Andrew is the one who finds the food that then Jesus turns into the church dinner for the multitudes. He's present with Jesus when a voice from heaven booms, "I have glorified it and will glorify it again." We get to Hippolytus on the lives of the 12 apostles. And he says, Andrew preached to the Scythians, or Scythians, modern day Georgia. No, we're not talking about Tekoa, or rather the nation that was formerly part of the Soviet Union, and it's also the home of Joseph Stalin. I don't know if you knew that, but Joseph Stalin was from Georgia. And the Thracians, which is modern-day Bulgaria. And was crucified, suspended on an olive tree at Petri, town of Achaia in Greece, and there too he was buried. So sometimes in medieval art you will see Andrew depicted as hanging, being crucified on an olive tree because of the, obviously not in the New Testament. Andrew didn't have very good PR. Eusebius only mentions him briefly. And he also says Andrew's ministry was in Scythia, modern-day Georgia. But so Eusebius may have been referencing Hippolytus. So we don't know if that was an independent collaboration of Hippolytus or not. This is interesting because here we are at the first apostle, and we've already got one who's preaching in modern-day Russia and modern-day Bulgaria. If we take church tradition, the apostles got pretty far. You know, Thomas in India, Joseph of Arimathea in England, Paul in France. I mean, they spread the word
throughout the Roman Empire.
Throughout the Roman Empire, and probably even past it if we include India. So they got a long way. I think that's very interesting. We have an apocryphal work. So I have a pre-recorded message. We are studying the apocryphal works not because I believe that they are legitimate works written by or about the people which they are referenced to. They were written probably in the 2nd or 3rd century and do not have anything to do with the actual apostles. However, we are studying them to fill in some of the legends that were later associated with the apostles and that we are still aware of today. Are there any questions on that? Thank you. So,
I'm telling Brian.
Thank you. People know they're on a forum. I like that. So, 3rd century Acts and martyrdom of the holy apostle Andrew. I love old books. You see this in the Middle Ages too, where basically the whole book is in the title. I mean, I love that. Describes the ministry and persecution of Andrew at Patre. So that's the same one that Hippolytus referred to, that he died. He was martyred there. Andrew is tortured and hung on a cross because he refuses to reveal the mysteries of Christ to people without them first accepting Christ and being baptized. And I really like that. You see that strain in a lot of early Christian literature, where people like Simon Magus, for example, he wants to know the mysteries of Christ and the mysteries of the Eucharist. And Peter says, no, you get baptized first, and then we'll talk about those mysteries.
Why?
And so here they're torturing the guy to try to get him to reveal the mysteries of the faith. And he said, you want to know the mysteries? I'll baptize you and then I'll tell you the mysteries.
Why?
Well, they felt back then that there were certain aspects of Christianity that you could only know about after you had gone through the 2-year instruction period as a catechumen. And there's still a vestige of that today. We still have confirmation, right? Now, we don't turn